What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Table, a horror movie podcast. This voice you're hearing is Mitch, your host that you hear every single week on the show. Boozy is not with us today. I gave him the option. I said, hey, look, we're going to be doing a Haunted Mansion double feature. And he said, nope, I'm out. Understandably so. This isn't for everyone. I wish he could be here because I'd really like him to get to know our guest. Our guest today is Zachary Tennent of the Formatted to Fit Your Screen podcast. How are you doing, Zach?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mitch. Happy to be here. Happy to be on the show. Doing a little formatted to fit outreach, and also hoping to raise awareness about the 2003 Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy. Something that I think that could be. I think that's the kind of thing that would be covered on my show,
Yeah.
typically. So it's a bit of a bridging of the gaps for me to be here, and thrilled to do it.
Yeah, it's a perfect episode to kind of show what life is like over on the Formatted to Fit feed, and also it's just a great Terror Table collab. But this is something that would have been right up our previous host of the show, Kyle Zervinsky. Like, he would have loved doing something like this. And I know you guys are friends.
Yes, this is definitely. I can imagine that Kyle probably would have saw this in theaters as well. I'll be curious as we get into it to know what your history was with the original Haunted Mansion. Well, I say original as in the
Yeah.
one that was new when I was a young child. But as I Googled into this, of course, there's a history with this intellectual property, as we'll call it, and including a Muppet television special from just a couple years ago that I had no idea about.
I was going to watch that, but I was a little Haunted Mansioned out after I got out of the theater for the new one. But I saw that on Disney Plus, and it's really interesting. Yeah, like this was, well, we got so much to talk about with Haunted Mansion, but before we move on and we just start getting to know you and talking about what we've seen and doing our normal Terror Table rambling, what made you, like, you reached out, you're like Haunted Mansion 2003 on the Terror Table. It's like, what? And I immediately jumped at it. What made you what got you to want to talk about this movie?
Well, that's a great question, and there's probably a lot of reasons behind it. I think as has come up on my show, we did an Army of Darkness episode on that show with friend of both shows, Scott Hamilton,
Great episode.
and thank you. And on that,
Both of
we
them.
talked about how the horror comedy is something that to me is just so. I don't want to say repulsive in a sense of like, oh, like shocking, gruesome, but like repellent, like something that I'm really like pushed away from. I've only seen Shaun of the Dead once. There's something to me of the convergence of the two that has just always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I've really tried to get at the heart of what that is because, a lot of people, they say, oh, I listen to everything except rap and country. And it's kind of like, well, that's like a political statement on like both of those. Like when people have biases of what they don't like, or they, I like everything except this, you have to investigate that a little bit. So I've tried to figure out what it is about the horror comedy that I struggle with. And I think what it is that for me, my relationship to horror is that it really is about dread. It's not as much for me about the ambience of a spooky, gothic, foggy autumn evening. I like that stuff. I enjoy that as well. But when I'm going to horror, I really want something that's getting at my basest, most primal fears. And when that's being undercut with a lot of skeletons falling out of closets or goofy sort of Danny Elfman score music, like these things, it makes it harder for me to get sucked into the terror of something. So I was just curious to revisit this movie that I had seen in theaters in 2003 and not seen since, not thought too much about since. But yeah, and now here we are. So
Yeah, that's really interesting because I love how, yeah, you basically just described everything that the Haunted Mansion is stuff that you're not really into.
well, but and as I try to do on my show, I have an enthusiasm and an appreciation for cinema that outweighs any of my personal biases that I want to see. I know we're going to talk about things that we've seen coming up, but I saw Barbie earlier today, something that I was pretty convinced I wasn't going to enjoy and was pretty sure wasn't for me. And I went into it with an open mind and I liked it. And I thought it was, I enjoyed some aspects of it quite a bit. So I go into things wanting to enjoy it, and I try on my show to see the good in things that maybe aren't necessarily amazing or complete crap, but shine a light on, oh, hey, maybe the lighting is good in this movie. Maybe that's something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that is something you do a really great job of on your show, which I urge people to check out. I know I've been on twice now. The first time we chatted about Jaws, and then the most recent time we talked about Light Sleeper, and the works of Paul Schrader. Both of those were really fun conversations. So I definitely encourage listeners to go and check it out if you haven't yet.
Yeah, two very different chats, but yeah, two
Yeah.
favorite episodes of the show, certainly for me. And yeah, because I think that movies, and Mitch, it's a great example for the two of us that uh, my enthusiasm and my desire to gush about film appreciation and to really talk about it with people who know has fostered some great relationships through doing my show, through you and I, and now I'm here on this show.
Yeah.
I think that film snobbery, the film bro archetype, any of those things, it's not all just being like, hey man, have you seen Fight Club? My show is a lot of that, and this show is some of that sometimes as
Yeah.
well. But it's all just enthusiasm. We're all just big fans of movies, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. All right, awesome. Well, let's get into it. So let's talk a little bit about other stuff you've seen recently. So you saw Barbie, and I should say, just I'll put this at the top of the show. I've already recorded the next episode that's going to be coming out after this one. Boozy and I recorded it last night. We talked about the recent documentary on Shudder called Sharksploitation, all about the sharksploitation craze and what came of it and what that genre consists of. It was a really great episode, but on that episode, I talked about Barbie and Oppenheimer. But I would feel free to open up the gates and talk about anything you'd like here. So, you saw Barbie. What else have you been up to?
Well, knowing that I was going to be coming on here, I wanted to get into some horror stuff because, as I was saying, I love all kinds of movies, and horror is certainly a section in the video store, when you're looking for something to watch. I checked out The Fog by John Carpenter, something that I hadn't seen before. Uh,
That is
quite
so
enjoy.
exciting. I saw that on your Instagram, and I was
Yeah,
like, it was on your one of your favorite discoveries of the year so far, or favorite
yeah.
first time watches, and that's one of my
First
favorite
time watch
movies.
of July. Yeah, it's reminded me. I can see why you would like it. It reminded me a lot of Jaws, with
Yeah,
kind of the small town political corruption bent to it. It has, as I was watching it, I was just thinking about the John Carpenter sort of trademark house style. And like you can watch something like Stranger Things now and you see all of the Steven Spielberg, like Amblin influences on it as well. But you look at the John Carpenter work and his influence and the shadow that these movies that he makes casts is so strong for movies that made comparatively so much less money in their day. It's remarkable the power that these movies continue to have. And then for me to watch it 43 years later, having never seen it, and it's effective and it works and it fits in with his style. I also watched Dark Star in the month of July as well, and I really enjoyed that one.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you should. If you're liking those, I highly recommend checking out my friend Daniel Epler's podcast. It's called Cobwebs, and he's going through all of the works of John Carpenter. And where Boozy and I are actually going to be on an episode coming up, but he just did Dark Star and then Assault on Precinct 13. And there's so many interesting movies in that man's filmography. He's without a doubt one of my all-time favorite directors.
I think I was just hearing about that on your podcast, just on the episode I was listening to.
Yeah,
Um,
It's great. His show is awesome, but really good conversations.
What have you been watching? What's something that's been on your mind lately?
I watched Dirty Work again,
Okay, right on.
which I don't normally talk about comedies on the podcast, but fuck it, I'm gonna do it now because I know you're a huge fan of
Yeah,
comedies.
of course. Here we go. Yeah, dirty.
That's
You did an episode of Dirty Work on my podcast with Vish Khanna.
I grew up with Dirty Work, man, and it is like huge fan of Norm Macdonald, debatably my favorite comedian of all time, and Artie Lang in the '90s, and how the movie, like learning later in life that it was directed by Bob Saget, like famously Danny Tanner from Full House. It's one of those things where watching it again, like it gets funnier every time I've seen it. And I've seen it so many times that I think I can like recite it. It's one of those movies for me, but I was watching it so frequently as a kid, and it's one of the most politically incorrect movies I've ever seen, I think.
Yeah, I didn't come to that one until I'm sure I was in my 20s when I saw it for the first time. I always saw it at the family video growing up. Never took it down because it probably, I guess, is an R-rated movie. I wasn't able to rent it. But yeah, that movie is so funny, and it's funny in the way that something I struggle with being a comedy film fan as an adult is that like a lot of comedy movies, there's a ceiling on like how funny a comedy can be or like how good a movie comedy can be. It's like they're only so funny, and like the funniest ones don't really have plots. Like it's a balancing act, and you can only do so many things. Dirty Work is a movie that has some of the most humor within just like a stretch of a movie starting and ending. Got like none of a plot,
Yeah, it's wall
no,
to wall.
no
Like,
character development or anything, but like a hilarious, form breaking, unique.
yeah, it's so poorly directed. Like it's insane how like, but that's like it just goes to show that that isn't what that movie's about, or like you don't need to have that incredible vision to be able to pull off a comedy like this. It's just Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang together is enough. And I'm drawing a blank on his name, but who the guy who plays their dad?
Oh,
Uh,
it's Jack Warden in that movie.
yeah, he's so like the whole movie is just it's so crass and
Chevy Chase and Don Rickles.
oh
Everyone
my
there.
god,
So
Chevy
funny.
Chase, I forgot. Don Rickles from Dennis the Menace 2.
Yeah, Dennis
Um,
the Menace 2 and Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, I guess.
yep. No, like, but what it made me think about is like, we're obviously I'm not gonna feed into that whole like woke culture destroyed comedy. But this is just such a prime example of a movie that just would not get a pass these days. But there's something about it, like it is so cruel and it's mean and it's crass. But since it's being led by Norm Macdonald, he finds a way to just, I don't know, like kind of bring these situations down to earth and make them not feel so mean. Like I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but
No, it is true because he's got such a warmth when he smiles, and
yeah,
it's that he's not a good actor. That's the,
no,
you don't mistake the two. It's not even that he's a good actor, that he's got really good like screen presence, but he's got his comedic persona, which is that he's endearing and lovable even when he says these off-color terrible things. And but that's again the thing, like being hilariously funny, like as I would agree, like Norm Macdonald, maybe like the funniest man who ever lived. It's like, but that's a movie is not the medium to show that off. Like it's hard to express just how funny someone is.
this is the type of movie that I think like that famous scene in Clockwork Orange where he's being tortured with being forced to watch something like this is something you could force someone to watch this movie and I think it would give them a mental breakdown by how cruel and obscene it is. It's I could see it just being torture for some people. But the last thing I'll say about it is and it has nothing to do with it, but Freddy Got Fingered is on Disney Plus right now. So if you've never seen it, you have a chance now to see. It's so hilarious opening up the Disney Plus app and seeing Freddy Got Fingered.
That is crazy.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it on Disney Plus, but I've seen Freddy Got Fingered. That was another one that, and I've maybe told this story on my podcast, but I rode my bike to the Clarence and Taylor VHQ in Saskatoon, the fabled talisman of my podcast.
Yeah.
And I rented Freddy Got Fingered. I was probably 12 years old, maybe at the time, something like that, and rode my bike home. And I just remember my mom like sort of confiscating it, like taking it to inspect it and looking at what it was. And it was just the longest pregnant pause before she just sighed and handed it back to me. And then I just went and watched it in the living room.
Oh my
That my
God.
parents, sometimes they would put the foot down, sometimes they would say no, but
That's a movie to do it for.
sometimes they just, yes, they didn't know. I don't know.
That's so funny. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
kind
wasn't
of
allowed to watch Old School, but I could watch Freddy Got Fingered.
that's hilarious. That's so incredibly wrong. I hate to admit how much that movie has formed me as a person, but I saw it at
I
such a young age. And Tom Green is honestly like maybe one of the biggest influences for me in just like a creative sense and like just starting to really pay attention to art and creative expression. I think he's very, very underrated for the amount of stuff that that guy has pioneered.
I think that's not uncommon for people of our age, actually, is that, yeah,
Yeah,
like a real appreciation for Tom Green, who still kind of kicking ass. He's just like living
yeah,
on a ranch now, it seems like. I saw something,
yeah.
he's
Him and
like
his dog
farming.
Charlie. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
No, he's what? Oh my God! Like another quick thing. I wasn't even planning on talking about dirty work on here. I don't know what made me do that, but not to go off on another big tangent. But if you are wanting to laugh your ass off, I just highly recommend going to YouTube and searching up the Tom Green Show Subway sandwich. Do you know which clip I'm talking about here?
No, which one's this?
It's he goes to order. It's just him. He's like got his camera hidden and he's ordering a sub, and he goes for about 4 minutes just getting them to keep adding toppings.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that just
I
goes
can
on for so
imagine it.
long.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. But yeah, that was dirty work and an impromptu Freddy Got Fingered shout out. So what else do you got, Zach?
Another, one to cross off the list from a big director. I mentioned Steven Spielberg earlier. I watched War of the Worlds, which I had never seen,
Ooh,
and I loved it.
it's so
I mean,
good.
it's really good. And I think I maybe all these years thought that it was mine or Spielberg, and maybe it even is, but like, boy, howdy, like it's better than Jurassic Park 2. Like, like
Yeah.
it's maybe Spielberg on an off day, but it's like, God, I'll take this. Tom Cruise, I felt was kind of miscast, but it's like funny miscasting. It's like you don't buy him as like a longshoreman or whatever he's supposed to be, this like blue collar guy who's like, what's hummus? What is this? Like,
Yeah.
I don't buy that, but like his crazy star energy is all over the place. Dakota Fanning giving an amazing performance. And what I found watching that movie, specifically when they're in the basement with the Tim Robbins character and like the tripod, coming all through, very similar to the kitchen scene and the end of Jurassic Park, is
Yeah.
that Spielberg, he really gets like terror. And
100%.
this is the terror table. Like I think of horror maybe as like, the sound of a crypt opening and like the Thriller video and kind of haunted house, like it, but like terror that like gets like to your heart and to your guts, like to really like shake you and chill your blood. Spielberg does it like as like better than anyone, kind of. Like I sort of
Yeah.
think he does it as good as anyone. And so that's what really blew me away was how terrifying War of the Worlds was for just being like a summer alien blockbuster and how mean of a movie it was. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah, that one caught me so off guard. I went to that one in the theater at the Center Mall Cineplex there when it
Oh
first came
yeah.
out. And I remember not having super high hopes for it. Like for whatever reason around that age, I wasn't a big Tom Cruise fan. And like now I love the guy.
Well, he
Specifically
had
his
bad
movies.
press though. That summer specifically, like when that movie was coming out, that's I think when he jumped on the
That was the
couch and
coach. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And that's why he had bad press. And then I thought that he was terrible. But it was the same thing with Ben Affleck, like these people who
Oh
had
yeah.
such tabloid publicity that when you're like 13, you're like, oh, that guy sucks. Like all his movies terrible. But then you actually go back and watch, and Ben Affleck and Tom Cruise are two of my favorites, and
Totally agree.
they had nothing
Yeah.
but bad press. Colin Farrell.
Yeah. Just remember being shocked by how scary War of the Worlds was and War of the Worlds was. And now I do consider it I think it's like one of his most underrated movies by far. And I would say easily his darkest and scariest aside from, like Schindler's List and stuff like that. But if we're talking on a pure, like you said, terror level, War of the Worlds it's gnarly and like it's so shockingly violent too. Like I remember I think I would have been like 12 years old when that movie came out, and seeing those tripods like penetrate people and then spray their blood around, I'm like, what the fuck? Like you would not at the time I was like, I would think about Steven Spielberg and his like E.T. and Jurassic Park, and even Jaws wasn't like overly bloody or anything. But yeah, it really caught me off guard. I love that movie.
He really, like, after 9/11, like kind of like through whatever, like the Minority Report AI era all the way basically up to Indiana Jones 4, he was really cooking there with like dark and sort of like harder edge stories that, you know, kind of outside of what we associate with Spielberg. Like he certainly got a lot more maudlin in the 2010s and kind of went back to his the schmaltzier prestige stuff, which I also like that. But
Oddly enough, the next thing I was going to talk about has something to do with Steven Spielberg as well. So is that all? Are those all your thoughts on War of the Worlds?
oh yeah, great movie. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I did a rewatch. Well, I guess one of them, I think it's a first time watch for me, but I watched the first three Poltergeist movies recently. So I rewatched Poltergeist. I've seen that one, a million times. I've seen the second one a couple times, and I think this time I realized that I might not have ever seen Poltergeist 3 in full. But the correlation obviously being that the original was written by Steven Spielberg. There's all this really annoying discourse about who really directed Poltergeist. Was it Toby Hooper or Steven Spielberg? And I just think that whole conversation's gotten a little tired over the years. Bottom line, I think like, this is a Spielberg script. You've seen Poltergeist, I assume.
I've seen Poltergeist once, some years ago. I haven't seen the sequels, but after seeing The Fablemans, I am really curious to go back and revisit it because it it should be one that I should have on my shelf and I should have like a few viewings under my belt.
Yeah, I think especially the original, it seems like something. Well, at the same time though, you said that you're not really big on the horror comedy thing, and I know a lot of people wouldn't necessarily call Poltergeist a comedy, but there is like a lightness to it that's sprinkled throughout the movie. Like, it very much does feel like a Spielberg movie, and then you have these intense scare sequences, and I think that Toby Hooper expertly, executed some of those scare sequences. But then you have like the ambulance score and the like just Steven Spielberg's heart that you can really feel in the script. And one of the big differences between Poltergeist and other movies of this era, or any of the haunted house movies, is you really care for the family. The family is such like a really nice dynamic where they just feel real. And yeah, it really works. I love the movie, but it is like it's so wacky. There are so many moments in the movie where I'm like, I can't believe, like, of course, the only reason this movie exists is because of Spielberg. Like he really, as the kids would say in the early aughts, Spielberg hooked his boy Toby Hooper up fat. I think he gave him an opportunity that not many people would have ever had to make a movie like this. But yeah,
He was such a kingmaker of
yeah,
like giving like Joe Dante, Robert Zemeckis, like there was an entire industry of Spielberg brats who like had opportunities off his coattails. And yeah, some of them were able to ride it to tremendous success, and then some of them it seemed they couldn't handle the pressure, or it didn't work that way for them.
I think that's one of the reasons why, like I don't know how much you know about the filmography and the works of Toby Hooper, but I definitely consider the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And that movie couldn't
That
be.
to me, sorry to jump in, that to me would be like an example of like a Mount Rushmore horror movie for me.
Yes,
Like that, as far as like what I respond to, what gets to me, that would be like a lodestar of like these are the things that
yeah.
I respond to. And I don't know too much about Toby Hooper's career, but I've had Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 on my to watch list for a long time, and I'm just waiting to get it from the public library. I wanted to see it before I came on this show, actually, but
Oh,
That
I would be so curious to hear your thoughts about that one.
I'm
I
really
love,
curious about it. Yeah.
yeah, I love it, but that's another one that it's like just loaded up with comedy, which I think really didn't resonate. And it's just like it just feels like a completely different franchise and so quick. And it being directed by the same person is just nuts. But I've that movie's grown in my esteem every year. I have so much fun with Texas Chainsaw 2. Poltergeist it's a blast. It's one of the best haunted house ghost movies. It's essential viewing in my opinion. The movie just works so well because of the performances in it. The father being played by Craig T. Nelson and the mother being Jo Beth Williams. They just have this chemistry that you don't see in nearly as many horror movies as you should. But like I just love they feel so real, stuff that I missed out on when I was younger and seeing it like the movie begins with them like smoking pot in their bedroom. And I just think that's so like thinking back on the time that this came out, which was obviously before I was born, it's just so interesting to see how they got that in the movie. And of course it happened because Spielberg just controlled the world at this time.
That is interesting that like we have a sanitized version of our parents or our parents' generation. And then, yeah, you go back and watch something like that. Obviously there was parents sitting in the audience in 1982 going back to smoke in their bedrooms at night. Like it's a weird, you don't associate Spielberg, Amblin Entertainment with any kind of counterculture, but
No,
they were aware of it, as funny and as at odds as they might seem.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm not going to spend too much time on two or three, but I like this whole franchise a lot. Like two is I was kind of surprised because I've heard mostly bad things about three. But that's easily the schlockiest one of the bunch. Two, it follows essentially the exact same story. That's one thing. These three movies have essentially the exact same story. And the third one is the only one that's missing Craig T. Nelson and Jo Beth Williams, but all three of them have Heather O'Rourke, and she played Carol Ann, the famous little girl in Poltergeist, and she had passed away just after they finished filming the third one. And it's the one of the most haunting things about that is like you find out. I still don't think I know fully how she died, but I know there was complications with medications that she was on. And when you watch the third one,
Yes.
her face is like she's really like it's really puffy and it just seems like, she's having an allergic reaction or something. And it's just so sad to watch it because it's like there's something so clearly wrong with her. Is she not getting help for this?
These people are making a movie around her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. But the movie itself, like the third one has so many wild practical effects. Like all three of them have great practical effects. But the third one it's like you could just tell they didn't have as much money and the team was maybe a lot more sloppy. But it's like kind of schlocky horror that I welcome from time to time. I like kicking back and hitting the vape pen and watching these goofy movies every once in a while. But I definitely
That's
recommend
what
a watch of all three.
Tubi is for those late nights with the vape pen.
Tubi is the best.
That gives me a question though that I just have to pose quickly. You say that the Poltergeist sequels are rip-offs or that they have the same story as the first one. Can you, off the top of your head, name many horror franchises where the sequels are distinctly different, not only from the first, but from one another, and couldn't also be sort of like hit with that same knock that it's just
Yeah,
repeating the original over and over?
no, for sure. And I think one that comes directly to mind for me is Nightmare on Elm Street, which is why I think it's my favorite franchise. Even the ones that are a little like the weaker installments, they of course they have that same core element of Freddy Krueger and them dealing with nightmares, but each movie feels drastically different. Like you can't there's never been a time where I'm like, oh, which nightmare was that part in? It's like I can distinctly say the Cockroach Hotel was in Nightmare 4, and I feel like that franchise did it a little bit better. Like they all feel a little fresher and different. Even the weaker installments, but other than that, like yeah, Friday the 13th, it's the same thing over and over and over again. Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Halloween.
2 is a perfect example. It couldn't be more different. Yeah, Halloween's essentially carbon copies aside from the third one.
That's the thing.
And
You either replicate it or you do a commentary on it, like you do, a hypermeta textual commentary, like a Scream 2020 or
yeah,
whatever.
like New Nightmare.
A New Nightmare. Yeah, and I rewatched the Never Sleep Again, like 4.5 hour Elm Street documentary,
It's my
over the
favorite.
course of the last week. It made for good late night viewing. And yeah, that I agree with what you're saying on the Freddy movies, though, that they do repeat the premise, but Freddy, the character, he's so heightened that from movie to movie, the characterization changes, like he becomes funnier or more villainous, like it goes in both directions, and that there's the scarier movies and then the more gag oriented and always based around the set pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's yeah, last night I actually like I just was having one of those nights I didn't know what I wanted to watch. I wasn't feeling anything, so I just threw Dream Warriors on for the millionth time and I couldn't stop thinking about it all day. It's like it's just one of my favorite movies. And now I'm like even after we wrap up here, I'm probably gonna go through a couple more of the Nightmare movies. I've seen those ones so many times that I don't necessarily need to do the gauntlet like front to back. I'll do that every couple of years, but there's certain franchises that I like just dipping my toe in, grabbing a sequel, and moving on after that. But I'm happy you mentioned Never Sleep Again. I love that documentary.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my Dream Warriors poster on my wall just as we speak right now from the Broadway Theater in 2010 that
Oh, the
I've
Tyler Baptist screening.
yeah, oh of course, and I've held good care of that poster ever since, so I'm gonna have that for a long time.
That's awesome. I did not know you had that. That's wicked. Yeah,
I've
that
got
so
a
that
few
was
good ones from over. I got Doberman Gang also from probably around 2010. I've got a few good ones. Jaws from 2012.
oh, that's awesome. Wait, Jaws from 2012?
Jaws, yeah, in 2012 at the Broadway Theater, and it was on film, and it was really red, as I seem to recall.
Oh, wild. Yeah, I wasn't at that screening, but it's crazy how many times we must have crossed paths and not even known it back in the day.
I think about that a lot, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, so that's the Poltergeist 1 through 3, and I might talk about it on another episode, but I got about halfway through the remake, and that is just one of the most vanilla, bland, worthless, completely senseless movies I think I can ever imagine. Like I often forget that it exists, and it's
Yeah.
such a
What's the
shame.
vintage on that one? Is that the last few years or longer?
Yeah, that okay, let's say 2015.
It's like such a non-entity that I feel like I saw the trailer for it yesterday. It's
Yeah.
had so little of a cultural footprint that I'm like, that's got to be new, right?
Yeah, it's wild when any movie can make Sam Rockwell seem like a bad actor. Like you're in major trouble if you got someone like like Sam Rockwell in your movie, and
If
it's
he's
just
sleepy, and yeah, that's not
yeah,
good.
it's a really bad movie. Like it's oh god, it's just especially after watching the original again, like there's just so much heart in it, and then this remake it just feels so hollow. And there are plenty of examples of remakes of classics that I absolutely love, but Poltergeist is like I think it's one of the worst offenders up there with the Nightmare remake because it's honestly worse than the night. No, nothing's worse than the Nightmare remake. I hate that movie so much. But this one is just it's just so boring and forgettable.
Nightmare Remake, I don't know if I ever saw it in full. I think I did watch like a pirated version of it when I was in high school, but I don't think I saw the entire thing all the way through like I did with Friday the 13th remake, which I owned on DVD and saw a few times.
Oh yeah, I don't hate that remake. I think it has like a great first half hour,
Like
but
first half hour is really fun. Yeah, it falls apart. The scene where the naked lady is swimming under the dock and then
yeah,
the
the
knife
machete
pulls
through the head.
the head and then pulls her up and her chest is exposed. That's Platinum Dunes, baby. That's
Yeah,
cinema.
I agree. Yeah, like I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Platinum Dunes movie as well. It's like, but
I'll
yeah,
do a double feature of that and Texas Chainsaw 2. I wonder
that's a great
how
idea.
that would go down. We'll see. Maybe I'll do that on the Texas Chainsaw Day because that's in August, right?
Yep.
When
Yeah,
I
you should
watched the
definitely do that.
first movie last year, I watched it because I saw that it was the date. and I owned it and had it on the shelf, but had never watched it. And I thought, oh, today's the day. And then so maybe I'll do that again, little double feature.
That's a great idea. I'd love to hear how those ones play together because they couldn't be more different, which I think is, kind of the way to go with a double feature.
Which order should I do them in?
Oh, absolutely do two first.
Okay, sure thing.
But the thing, actually, I don't know because the remake is it's so mean and it's so dark. And the Texas Chainsaw 2 is just like it's an assault of depravity. I don't know. I think you just roll the dice on that one. But yeah, that was the Poltergeist trilogy and the remake. Well, what else you got, Zach?
I also watched recently the Peter Bogdanovich multi-hour documentary "Running Down a Dream" about Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Ooh,
That's deviating pretty far from the horror theme, but I did enjoy that quite a bit. Lots of I'm a sucker for those big long, like the Bob Dylan documentary and the George Harrison documentary that Scorsese did. Anything like that of these revered 20th century figures. And the people are interesting, the music is good, and it's inspiring, but always not reverential. Like at different points in this documentary, Tom Petty kind of comes off like an asshole, and he maybe even had final cut on it and like let himself look like an asshole.
that
But
sounds
there's
like a Tom
different,
Petty thing.
well, there's different parts where he's like, he's talking about guys who have been in and out of the band, and he's like, and Bill's not going to tell the story like this because he's a coward. And then it cuts to Bill, and he's like, "No, yeah, I was really out of hand on that tour. Like he was right to fire me." Like
That's
clearly,
wild.
there's like unsettled bad blood between these guys that is documented in this movie. But who knows if they ever squash the beef later. But found that really interesting. Lots of good footage, lots of insight into the recording industry. And I didn't know that much about Tom Petty. I thought that maybe I did by hearing his music on the radio my entire life and, being kind of a casual fan. But he had quite an impact on the music industry and like a big role to play in sort of like similar fights about artist royalties that, have people striking on the streets of Los Angeles as we speak now. These things are all kind of connected when it comes to corporate greed. So I thought that documentary on Tubi as well was fantastic.
Awesome. I was going to ask you because I've never seen this one. But I love documentaries like that.
I've
And
been doing a lot of rock docs on Tubi lately. Those go down really easy.
yeah, I think is I don't know. Well, it's definitely a rock doc, but there's the Foo Fighters back and forth documentary. I don't know if you've seen that, but I think I saw that was on Tubi as well. I own the Blu-ray, but I used to be a big Foo Fighters fan. Like they haven't released anything I've enjoyed in a long time, but I remember that documentary being very good.
I watched the Dave Grohl Sound City documentary, which I did enjoy in the
Hmm.
first half. I thought the second half kind of just turned into like a jam session, and I kind
Yeah.
of didn't like it as much. No, I don't know what the other face to face is, you said?
No, back and forth
Oh,
is what
back
it's
and forth.
called.
Yeah, what's
Y-
that?
You should actually watch it. It was them recording Wasting Light, which is I still consider their last great album.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I really like that album, and I think that documentary made me like it even more. They go through like the whole history of the band and all of the if you're in the mood for a rock doc, man, though that doc is so good. Obviously, it'll probably be a little hard to watch now with everything that happened with Taylor and still pretty fresh. But it's a really solid documentary.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna check that out. Yeah. Yeah, Foo Fighters. I almost went and saw them. They played the Verdun Auditorium kind of here in town, which they just announced the show like a week out, and it was the first concert at that venue in over 20 years or something, sold out instantaneously. So didn't get to go, but
Yeah.
I kind of
They're a bucket list band for me. Even though like it was after that, and then they like when Sound City came out and like Sonic Highways, it was during Sound City where I was like, I know everyone there are so many people who would make fun of me for liking the Foo Fighters because they're just such a boring white guy rock band, and I'm like, I never really fully got that. And then Sonic Highways came on. I'm like, oh, okay, this I see what you guys mean now.
Yeah, it was kind of a slow. They had a turnaround. I saw them in 2008 in Saskatoon, one of the
Oh,
first big arena concerts I went to, and it was good. It was memorably good. A
yeah.
show I still continue to think about.
I really wanted to go to that show, and I had tickets and I had to sell them because I was booked to work at Rogers Video, and I
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
take letting anything get me fired from that job. I loved that job back in the day.
Ratatouille was out on video. You had to have those new releases on the shelf.
Oh man, did you ever do the video store? Like, did you ever work in video stores? I don't know if we talked about this.
No, I never have. I tried. I leaned hard on the proprietor of Pick a Flick on
Oh
Hurley
yeah,
Drive. I really wanted to get a job with that guy because I was in there renting quite a bit, but no, never had any kind of rental store experience. It was always the dream for me.
yeah. No, and I feel bad because like yeah, I think that especially anyone who loves movies as much as we do, like that's just a rite of passage. That sucks that it was robbed. So many people were robbed of the chance of doing that. I worked at Rogers and Blockbuster, and I can easily say Rogers was the better job. When I got hired, the manager was like, one thing you needed to do was he would make you took home two movies, and then you'd have to basically write a book report or like a review and how you would sell it to a customer and what you'd say about it. And you could pick any movies you
Ah,
wanted. And this will show you like the date that I was working
okay, yeah,
on the new release wall. There was the two movies I took home was Open Range or Open Season,
yeah, uh-huh.
the animated movie.
Ashton Kutcher and Martin Lawrence. That
Yes,
one, yeah.
it was that, and the Trailer Park Boys movie.
Oh, how'd you like them? I haven't seen either.
Oh, loved them both at the time, but that's just it. Just goes to show how I'm a student of cinema. Those are the types of movies I was taking home at the time. I've never told that story before, but yeah, they
I love that because it makes me feel like that guys like you and it's like the Quentin Tarantino thing that I recently read his book, Cinema Speculation, and he names these obscure movies of like who could have ever, heard or who remembers this with some no name whatever. But then like if you were a kid when that movie came out and you went to a theater and saw it, you're going to remember it forever. It's like, what do you mean you don't remember Rebound with Martin Lawrence? Like, that was a hit movie. Like,
oh my
everyone
god,
saw
Rebound.
Rebound.
Remember Joanna Man?
I haven't seen Joanna Man. I think I know the premise.
I completely forgot about that movie until you said Rebound for some reason. But I can't imagine how rough that one would be these days.
I think
Uh,
Rebound got made off the success of Kicking and Screaming,
yep,
but
that's kicking and screaming.
even that movie didn't have enough that like the rising tide couldn't lift the ship of Rebound. But
No, another comedy from that era that is insanely underrated that I didn't really like when it first came out, but now I
I'm
see
really
clips of it all the
curious.
time. Semi Pro.
Oh yeah, I
Semi Pro is so good.
saw that in theaters and hated it. I'd be
Me
curious
too.
to go back. I loved Will Ferrell and I saw that and I thought it sucked. I'd be really
It's
curious to go back and rewatch that now.
dude, it's so harsh. Like there's a scene at the beginning where Will Ferrell, he's like the captain of the team and he's the announcer as well. So he's introducing his team and introducing himself last.
He was pretty funny in Barbie, I
Oh,
thought.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is, like, after Anchorman came out, he just did Anchorman over and over and over again.
That
Um,
is true.
and I
Yeah.
guess even semi-pro falls in line with that, but it just yeah, it stands out a little bit differently for me. I don't know. There's something about that movie that I find it fucking hilarious.
I would be curious about that I liked Will Ferrell movies so much. Like I saw Anchorman in theaters after my mom had already seen it, so she knew what she was getting us into, and she took me and my brother to go see it. And then my whole family saw Talladega Nights on vacation a couple years later. So we were like a Will Ferrell
Yeah.
fan family. I think I maybe went and saw Stranger Than Fiction in theaters, maybe. I don't even
Uh,
know.
dude, I
But
did
like,
a midnight screening of Stranger Than Fiction at the Rainbow Cinemas.
oh yeah, a lot of rowdy teens at that one, I can imagine.
Yeah. That would have been around the time I saw House of Wax on a midnight screening as well.
that stands to a little more reason than
Yeah.
Stranger Than Fiction.
You
But
don't know
yeah,
what I was
maybe
thinking.
if that movie was is super crass though, maybe it's because I was sitting in a theater with my parents watching it and I didn't want to laugh at something that seemed that I wouldn't want to laugh at it in front of them.
Yeah.
Because like Anchorman and Talladega Nights, there's some innuendo and like whatever in that, but that's also just a lot of like quippy one-liners and kind of like physical comedy.
Yep. Talladega Nights, Christopher Nolan's favorite movie.
Yes, I love that. He's so real. He's just a
Yeah.
real guy.
No, I love it as well. Do you have anything else that you've seen recently, Zach, that you want to mention?
Oh geez, anything else? I watched Death Wish 3. Kind of enjoyed that. That was a very passive viewing. That was really a movie that was on the TV in the background, but I was happy to be able to strike that off the list.
I've never seen the third. I don't think I've seen two or three.
The third one, he's getting into a lot of like he's really malicious at that point. Like he's like it's a cat and mouse kind of thing, and he's setting people up for gruesome deaths. The score was done by Jimmy Page,
Oh,
not some of his best work, I might say, but kind of interesting nonetheless.
I had no idea that Jimmy Page did scores.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he maybe did a few. I don't can't name any other
Yeah.
ones he did off the top of my head, but
The
I feel
first
like that's not the only one.
the first thing that comes up when you look it up on IMDb is Godzilla 1998.
Oh yeah, the Cashmere.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Puff Daddy Cashmere riff. That's hilarious. Um, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I need to go through that. I went through a bit of a Charles Bronson phase a couple years ago. I remember really liking the first Death Wish.
I've watched a lot of him this year on Tubi. There's a lot of canon films with Charles Bronson. Some of them are better than others. I think 10 to Midnight was pretty good. Kinjite
Oh,
was
I love
really
10 to
good.
Midnight. You know which one sucks that like is weird? It gets built up because there's a remake of it, but my God, the mechanic.
Yeah, I did watch that one. That's yeah, sleepy movie. Is that John Milius?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I
Some
saw
yeah,
that
that
one.
that one wasn't good though. Yeah, you're right.
I remember just thinking because like it has a great poster, and I've always heard like stories about Charles Bronson and oh, it was Michael Winner. That's who directed it.
Oh, okay. Of the Death Wish movies, yeah.
Yeah, I like a lot of Michael Winner movies. There's a really weird, hokey 70s horror movie called The Sentinel that he directed that has this really bizarre scene where they celebrate a birthday for a cat. And it's like one of those things that just like could not be more out of place in the movie. But I miss when that kind of shit snuck into mainstream movies. But yeah, so the Death Wish 3 you recommend?
I'd give it a recommend, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I got one more. So that's the tricky part is I was trying not to talk about it on the recording last night because that episode's going to come out later than this one. But I was just so excited about it that I just couldn't help myself, and I want to give it just like a real authentic actual review right now. And that's on Friday night I went and saw Talk to Me,
Okay.
the new A24 film from the Raka Raka team. Do you know anything about those guys?
No, I don't think I do.
So they're like Australian YouTubers, and I've never seen their show. I still like I saw the movie on Friday, and now I wanna go and see what else they've done. But they're the Filippo brothers. I need to learn how to pronounce that. Danny and Michael Filippo, because these guys crafted one of the best modern horror movies I've seen in a very long time. I absolutely loved this movie. I went with a couple of my buddies and my pal Nick Humphreys, who's my mentor. He's been on the show a bunch, and then my friend Patrick, who I'm making a movie with right now. And we just kind of wanted to go and get inspired, and that's exactly what this movie did. It's truly like I don't want to overhype it so much because I do worry about you know things getting destroyed by hype, but there already is so much of it around this movie. I just don't see how you could be a fan of horror and go into this and not be like at least a little bit blown away. It's just a really genuinely scary and intense hour and a half. Like it's a tight hour and a half. It felt like it was like 20 minutes. But it's it's someone like myself, my friend Patrick, who's like he's just kind of getting into horror at the moment. And like he likes horror movies, but they always work on him. Like when he's over and we're watching something at my house, he'll grab a pillow and he like holds it. He's one of those guys. He gets
Mhm.
genuinely scared. And I don't. Like I've seen this stuff for so long. I'm just desensitized to it at this point. And there's a moment in Talk to Me that I jumped out of my seat. Like, and it wasn't even a jump scare. It was I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It made me just so like uncomfortable. But I loved it. It's without a doubt the best horror movie I've seen this year. And I highly encourage anyone who's on the fence about going out to for it. I think you should make some time to see it.
In just like a word or two or a subgenre, what are we dealing with this movie?
It's a just straight up supernatural horror movie.
Right on. Okay.
And it is one of those things like it's another thing I mentioned next week is that it seems like one of those, there are rules and you gotta follow these things in order to defeat this thing, whatever this entity is. And it's essentially like these kids find it becomes kind of like a party trick where they have this hand that when you touch it, you say, talk to me, you see a ghost in front of you, and then you say, I let you in, and then you get possessed. And there's a way, it's almost like what's the game that people like kids were like making themselves pass out? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Um, I do know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the name.
Yeah, so it's something like that, and I think one of the some of the criticisms I've seen too is it's like just a stupid concept. Like what kids would ever do this? It doesn't make any sense, and it's like, well, first of all, it's a horror movie, so you don't need to take everything so literally or seriously. But I feel like for me, it was definitely like the whole message is like an allegory on what kids do for attention these days. Like yeah, the immediate thing I thought about was when everyone was eating Tide Pods.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is just like a supernatural horror version of teenagers eating Tide Pods in front of cameras.
And there's also what were they snorting that you baking or was it
Was it Pop
snorting?
Rocks?
No, but it was something of you where you eat a spoonful of
Oh,
flour.
the cinnamon
Cinnamon. There,
cinnamon
yes, there we
challenge.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that, but you're being possessed by a demon.
I was in the wrong part of the pantry trying to remember what that was. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, flour would be terrible too, but I remember I did the cinnamon challenge and that was terrible. But no, it's a really clever, well written, and above all else, like so well acted. There's like there's specifically one I would easily say it's an all-timer for a young adult performance, and that's Joe Bird, who plays the character Riley. He's a little boy who, partakes in the game, and you just can't believe the performance that they got out of these people. And I can see why a lot of people like they're saying this is like, in line with something like It Follows and Hereditary, and it's right up there for me with like modern horror movies that I feel like I just saw a classic. So that's always exciting for me.
I'm excited to check this out from the Rocka Rocka crew.
Yes, the Rocka Boys. I want to check out some of their
Interesting.
YouTube stuff tomorrow, but yeah, so Talk to Me was great. But that's all I have to chat about. Do you want to venture down into the really rich world of Walt Disney and the Haunted Mansion?
I think we should get into the depth of development hell with the Haunted Mansion.
All right, we'll see you all on the other side.
The Gracie Mansion. 52 bedrooms. 67 bathrooms. 999 ghosts. And one unsuspecting guest who will come face to face with every one of them. The Haunted Mansion.
All right, and welcome to our main feature presentation where we're going to be talking about two movies. We're doing a double feature of The Haunted Mansion from 2003 and Haunted Mansion from 2023. Kicking things off with Rob Minkoff's The Haunted Mansion, starring, oh, I got notes here. I specifically planned, I didn't take many notes for this episode, but knowing that you were coming on, I planned something that you do on your show that is one of my favorite things in the world. This movie starring Eddie Murphy from The Adventures of Pluto Nash. It's also starring Terrence Stamp from My Boss's Daughter.
From Bowfinger.
From Bowfinger. Um, Mark John Jeffries from Get Rich or Die Trying, who's
Okay, very nice.
he plays Michael Jordan Evers. Do you know who I'm talking about when I say Steve Hintner?
Steve, from Seinfeld.
Yeah, yeah. To me, I'm like, I see Steve Hintner, and I just feel like this guy's just Phil Hartman at home.
Yeah. I know that's very true. Or Dylan Baker at home as well.
Yeah, he's Phil Hartman from Jingle All the Way. And then we got Wallace Shawn from House Arrest.
Wallace Shawn, the star of Rifkin's Festival, one of my favorites.
Did you ever see House Arrest? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have seen House Arrest. I own that on DVD. Actually, that's a funny movie. And what I remember about that one is that he's so kind of happy to be there. Like
Yeah,
he's the one adult who's kind of enjoying the house arrest.
yeah. I haven't seen that movie since before my parents were not divorced. So that was before I was 9 years old. But I rented that movie a lot.
You had a game plan right there to prevent it from happening. What happened, Mitch?
Then I saw The Parent Trap. And I was like, no, what was it? There was a divorce movie I saw that showed that you get two Christmases, so you get more gifts. And I was like, fuck it, yeah, let this marriage burn.
Oh, well, certainly you certainly have had to have talked about how in the 90s the trend of divorced dad movies
Oh
was
yeah,
just the cultural zenith of the
yeah.
Santa Claus as well falls into
Mrs.
that.
Doubtfire.
Iron Giant, I feel like,
Oh
is also
yeah.
one of those. Yeah.
Now thinking about it, those are all like my favorite '90s movies as a kid. Yeah, great movies. Another great '90s movie, Kevin Pollak from End of Days.
Yes.
He's
Cop out.
Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis from Beverly Hills, Chihuahua. I guess Jamie Lee Curtis, that's in 2023. She's in that one. But yeah, I think that's all I got here. But I don't know if I've ever laughed harder than when I was listening to you and Scott Hamilton talking Army of Darkness. And he was like, said something about Mark Wahlberg, and you're like, oh, Mark Wahlberg from Planet of the Apes.
It's yeah, I always try to contextualize these stars from sort of like how I remember them or how they first
Yeah.
came onto my radar. So yeah, I got a real kick out of that.
I was thinking about it today. Like, I don't like I would think of 100 other movies to with Mark Wahlberg before Planet of the Apes. I was thinking this morning, I was like, when I was writing that, I'm like, I think I would have said Contraband before I'd say Planet of the Apes. And that's like one of the most forgettable movies ever made.
You'd say Mystery Men before you'd even mention that as a Tim Burton movie.
Oh my
Like
God, that is so
that's
true.
no one's most memorable moment, that movie.
Oh God, yeah. I unfortunately, I remember going to that in the theater, and I think I pretended that I loved Mystery Men growing up. I got to see it again. It's been a while, or do I? When's the last time you watched Mystery Men?
Last time I watched it, it wasn't for me. I'll say that
Yeah,
much.
I
But
believe that.
but I've heard it's a classic from people who I do. I mostly trust their judgment. I don't know.
Yeah, I've just never been a big Greg Kinnear guy. I don't know what it is, but he's just kind of always bugged me, and I think that he kind of was like repellent for me from rewatching that movie.
I do like him, but I know exactly the Kinnear quality that you're getting at. He's a little too he's like white bread, but he's also like a third guy from the left. Like he's not quite a
Yeah.
leading man, kind of handsome, but he doesn't quite have like the juice.
Yeah, he's just always like a sarcastic asshole. And I think maybe like because I feel like a lot of times people will shit on things that people do, and then there you find out the reason is because it's like, oh, that's kind of how I am. Like for a while I didn't like Jason Bateman, but then I was like, everything I don't like about Jason Bateman are all qualities that I have that I hate about myself.
That's we never like to feel too seen.
Yeah.
I know a bit of that as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I think oh yeah, the last one I have here is it's always a plus for me when Jennifer Tilly shows up in anything because like I was such a huge fan of Bride of Chucky growing up, and honestly, I still love that movie. Like that franchise is up there as well with one of my favorites. It's just so much fun. Like even the weaker installments, I have a good time with. But yeah, it was fantastic seeing her show up in this and play Madame Ray Liotta.
Yeah, Jennifer Tilly, someone who she falls into the Fran Drescher camp of you put her in something and you have my attention. You have
Yeah, no, that's a great poll. They're both like they have such unique voices.
yeah, I think they appeal. They're a type. They're a type in the same, the two of them, for a certain kind of adolescent.
Yeah, let's get into the movie now. So, when you said you saw this in the theater.
Yes, I did. My mom took me to go see this in theaters when it was new. Not sure why. Well, I mean, I went and saw a lot of movies as a kid, as, if we had a reward for something or, special occasion, go to see a movie was always a nice treat. I do have a brother and he didn't come to see this. He would have been 11 at the time, so not too old for this movie, but maybe he felt too old for it. I think I probably enjoyed it at the time. I don't remember hating it, but I never had any desire to get back to it afterwards. I was a big Eddie Murphy fan when I was a kid. Certainly by the time this movie came out, I had seen The Nutty Professor, I had seen Shrek. I was immersed in the fast talking, funny man, Eddie Murphy. So I think that was probably a big selling point, maybe for me, as odd as it might be, but that Eddie Murphy was a kid's movie star in 2003.
Yeah. No, he really was. Like I at this
Daddy
time,
Daycare, probably the same year I saw that in theaters.
yeah, well, Daddy Daycare, Dr. Dolittle, um, and yeah, like what there's so many movies. Oh, you said Bowfinger, and I know that's about was it yeah, Bowfinger is one that you and I kind of bonded over a little bit
Yeah.
because like I grew up with that movie and I loved it.
Well, I didn't get to that one until later. Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin are both kinds of examples of they were super ubiquitous, specifically when I was a young kid of like 2002. There was a trillion, bringing down the house, cheaper by the dozen, Looney Tunes back in action. Like Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin were both cooking so much.
Yeah.
And then by the time that I was like 14 or whatever, and I'd outgrown just kind of like the shit that a child watches, and then I had a reappreciation for these people. And I'm like, oh no, Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin are like goated. I grew up watching the shittiest stuff they've ever done, but like 20 years earlier, these guys were kings. And then that's where I went and saw Bowfinger and I saw all of the classic Eddie Murphy movies and really, like had the comedy fan appreciation. But when I watch it now, like when I went back and just sat and watched Haunted Mansion, this is, Eddie Murphy kind of making an okay paycheck. He's not sleepwalking in this movie the way he does in Wes Craven's Vampire in Brooklyn, where I think he's
Yeah.
giving a really bad performance. He's got his eyes open in this movie. Like he's kind of got some energy to it.
Yeah, you could still see that he's like having a bit of fun with it. Yeah, I guess I'll just quickly jump in with my history with this thing is I didn't see this until I think it would have been like 2018 or something like that.
Okay.
Because I was a 13-year-old movie snob at this point, even though I was secretly, renting open season and Trailer Park Boys. I just remember being like, I was a teenager. I wasn't a little kid watching these movies anymore where I was like, Haunted Mansion isn't for people in my age group. That's like I was too old for it, even though I was watching
6 months
Monsters.
can make such a difference. Like
Yeah,
you can be just on the other side of something and you miss it completely.
exactly. Yeah. And I was watching Monsters Inc. on repeat at this time. So it's like, what the fuck was wrong with me? But honestly, I'm kind of happy I didn't see it then because I watched it in 2018. I think that's around the time I would have watched it. I think it's because I was planning a trip to Disneyland and Universal in Florida, and I was excited to go on the Haunted Mansion ride. And I didn't hate it by any means at that time, but it just felt like, yeah, it's a mess, but it's like it's a kids movie. It's not made for me. And I was like, I'm sure I probably would have liked it if I would have seen it when I was, 7, 8, or the target demographic for it. But looking back on it now, like on a rewatch, there's so much I actually really like about this movie. I think that like the storyline and the jokes don't really land almost like ever. Sometimes so much so that it becomes funny that the jokes just are that bad.
It's pretty
Uh,
sweaty. Yeah.
it totally is. It just doesn't feel natural in any way. But, a huge part of the reason why I love horror so much and why I obsess over this art form is because of the makeup work and like the special effects. And this was famously done by Rick Baker, who is one of the best to ever do it. And there's something about this movie that has the spooky autumnal quality that I just really like looking at it. And I was looking at some reviews today of it, and people are saying that it's like a really ugly looking movie, and I couldn't disagree more. Like I like how this movie looks. I think the ghosts look awesome, like the skeletons that are popping out, or it just feels very Halloweeny for me, which is why, I give it a huge pass because of that. Like it's almost like I have blinders on because it's like, oh, it's showing me things that I like, so it's kind of tricking me into liking it. But it's a pretty surface level movie. It's fun enough, and it's not 2 fucking hours long.
No, I would really agree with quite a bit of what you said there. Like my takeaways on this watching was like, yeah, like Eddie Murphy, as I was saying before, it's like comedy movies are not the way to showcase that, like that someone's super funny. It's like you're there to give a performance, serve a function within a story, try to be funny along the way if you can. Like Eddie Murphy's doing what he can with the material. The supporting cast is okay. Wallace Shawn, always a joy to see him. Like it's not super spooky, but it is well, it's not super scary, but it is super spooky. It's super adorned with the haunted mansion. Like it feels like going into a haunted house, or at least having one described to you. It has all of these tangible qualities to it. I felt that watching the '03 and now watching the '23 side by side, it's just a compare and contrast in like what has changed in filmmaking. That this movie, some of the sets look cheap, but they still look like sets. That's pretty cool. They don't
Yeah,
look like
exactly.
they don't look like a cheap, shitty green screen. Like I thought that sometimes I thought this movie looked really impressive, and then sometimes I thought it looked pretty cheap and kind of like it had aged sort of poorly. But at no point did I think that it just looked like no thought or effort was put into it whatsoever. It looks like a movie that was poured over. And director Rob Minkoff, who directed The Lion King as well, this guy's had an
That
interesting
is
career.
crazy.
Started in animation and then broke into feature film directing and made the Stuart Little films and then this, and I think continued to have a live action career after this one. But it yeah, like it I thought that it had like giallo lighting. Like I've come to really have an appreciation for
Yeah.
lighting in old movies because I have an appreciation for how underlit everything shot nowadays is for the most part, or that it's done with, available light. It doesn't have any cinematic layer of interest to it. It just looks like you're in the room with people standing there watching it happen. And what's the, or it's desaturated to be just gray nothingness, which is such a problem with media of the last like decade we're coming on now,
Yeah.
maybe. I was also impressed, I must say, that I didn't think the Haunted Mansion, I was like, how scary can a Disney horror, and we're gonna put it in quote,
Yeah.
it's a Disney horror movie and it's an Eddie Murphy. How scary can this be? And then we do have like suicide imagery in the opening credits of this movie. We've
Oh
got
yeah. It's
Terrence
dark.
Terrence Stamp being dragged to hell at the climax of this movie. Like that looked like something out. It's like, what movie am I watching? I'm checking like the
Yeah.
YouTube rental and stuff when that happens at the end
That's
of
what
the
you
90-minute movie.
Yeah, that's what you get for being in My Boss's Daughter.
I'm curious if that is that one you've seen. Can you
I
give me
saw
a
it in a
recommend on
theater.
that? Was it good?
No, it was awful. I can't remember pretty much anything about it, but I just remember it was very much in that time where it was like My Boss's Daughter and Just Married, and Ashton
And
Kutcher was
also
somehow on top of the world with Punked.
there was also In Good Company with Dennis Quaid and
Right.
Topher Grace. I saw that one. That was a what's the, Armageddon and Deep Impact of its day was My Boss's Daughter.
Yeah, I had a burnt DVD copy of In Good Company. I don't know why, but yeah, I watched that one quite a bit as a kid. But no, where was it? Oh yeah, the I don't know how I got us off on that, but yeah, like I don't know, man, just like the sets and the ghosts and the skeletons in this movie are worth it for me. It's also fun seeing Eddie Murphy not in a fat suit or being like overly offensive in that regard. People often forget how truly funny that man is. Like his stand-up is some of the greatest ever. He's one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, I think the movie is like it's what I remembered from 2003 that like they're at the mansion like less than 10 minutes into the movie, right? Like even if you include the credits, like they're at the mansion right in the first act. The spooks and scares start pretty early on. There's nothing that I found egregious or shitty about this movie, which is maybe not the most ringing of endorsements, but it's also, that's more than you can say about plenty of movies. Like
Yeah.
this, I would totally, if I was a parent or if I was hosting a Halloween party and I wanted something on in the background, this is, it's got all the visuals that you would want to see, and it's got just kind of a spooky atmosphere to it. I loved the heads, the barbershop quartet singing
Yeah.
heads, who I feel like those were part of the marketing, right? Like those had to have been all
One
over the
I re That's like one
trailers.
of the main things I remember about it. And I feel like even you posted this a couple weeks ago. Um, it was like falling falling asleep watching a movie and waking up to like the DVD
Yeah.
screen. And I'm pretty sure because I think my sister rented Haunted Mansion or someone did, and I was around the like title screen and it was those fucking heads singing. I'm like, that would be nightmarish to wake up to in the middle of the night.
Scene selection. I can
Yeah.
imagine it. Yeah. But and those felt like I'd so I it's a bit of a tangent here that I did see Barbie today and I had seen a compare and contrast from someone who went to Barbie test screening and then went and saw the theatrical cut and like said what the differences were. And I had read prior to going into the movie that there was way more Michael Cera compared to the test cut. And then I saw the movie, and there's so many 1 second just like shots of Michael Cera that just feel super shoehorned in because it's like, oh, people just love Alan. Like they just want
Yeah.
more of Alan. Apparently, the one kid loves the Speedo man. Like, so that's what I felt with the talking heads in this movie. When they come back at the end, it's like they wanted these singing heads to be like on t-shirts. Like these were going to be the minions. They're going to be toys of these heads.
What a poor calculation. It's like,
But I would love to sorry to
no,
go
go
with
for it.
another thing here. I would love to know for you because this movie, I'm fascinated with Hollywood success and I'm fascinated with failure and I'm fascinated with the best laid plans that go awry and don't work out. This came out the same year, I believe, as Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl, a movie that grossed 4 times as much as this movie. That
Yeah.
film was a massive success, spawned a huge franchise that continues probably into this decade. I don't even know. Are they
Yeah.
still making those movies? Yeah. Like,
Yeah, they are. I think they have one with Margot Robbie coming back and then or coming out, and then that they're gonna somehow find a way to get Johnny Depp back in.
yeah,
You
everyone
never know.
involved, everyone needs it. Everyone,
Yeah. Man,
Johnny
like,
needs it. Disney needs it.
yeah. I was gonna mention that as well, like for obvious reasons, the year and that it's a Disney ride and it had such a just a landslide success compared to this. But Curse of the Black Pearl is a fucking amazing movie. Like I
I
still
didn't like it in theaters. I thought it was boring. I might have been a little just on the young side for all
have you
that.
not seen it since?
Probably not, honestly.
Dude, the original like Curse of the Black Pearl is and it's so good. Like I love that movie, and I like Dead Man's Chest because I'm a sea boy. I like stuff on the sea. I've always been like I was really into pirates as a kid as well. I can't really sing the praises for any of the other pirates movies, but specifically Curse of the Black Pearl, like that's one that every time I go back to it, every couple like 4 to 5 years, it kind of blows me away by like it's just a really well put together movie, and it looks great and it's fun, and the performances are like nothing else. And that's saying a lot for a movie with Orlando Bloom, a guy who's like could be compared to having the charisma of a bowl of oatmeal.
I was gonna say mashed potatoes. That you took the
Yeah,
words right out of my mouth there. Yeah.
yeah,
No, maybe I should go back and check that out. That was not 'cause I just wanted to watch The Mask at that age, you know, like I needed the
yep,
Eddie Murphy comedy side of things. But it is just like fascinating to me that like they didn't make this movie wanting to make a quarter of what Pirates of the Caribbean made. They wanted this to make as much money.
hmm,
There was a plan for this movie that it was going to have in 2023, the cultural impact and the legacy that this Pirates franchise does, not just be something that's since been remade twice, once with the Muppets. Like
yeah,
it's just a bizarre look into a different world, but it's like did they, because I remember Pirates of the Caribbean being like, oh, it's a Disney movie, but it's like kind of dark. Like this
yeah,
doesn't feel like kid appropriate. Then this movie, it's like a guy's fucking hanging himself in the opening credits, and it's like, okay, this is like in a different direction. Like, but
yeah,
yeah, audiences didn't respond to it, I guess, or they responded, but not enough to make this a phenomenal hit.
yeah. No, exactly. I'm pretty sure this one did bomb pretty hard, didn't it?
I
Like,
think it did. I didn't quite have the let's no, I don't have the information in front of me, but
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I didn't even think to look at that, but let's look at this. So it made $75 million. It had a budget of 90 million. So yeah, it was a bit of a like, yeah, it was a flop.
big
Um,
flop.
yeah, big time. And yeah, like you said, they clearly did want this to be the next Pirates of the Caribbean, or like they were hoping both those movies would take off in the way that Pirates did. But then yeah, it is interesting thinking that now 20 years later, they're like, well, let's take another whack at it. And I
Eddie
guess we're
Murphy, I'm just shocked hearing that. There's like Pluto Nash, like he had so many bombs. He's had
hmm
so many movies that have come out and not like I wonder whose movies have lost more money than his if you discount the ones that have made a ton of money and
yeah,
just
like
look
if
at the ones that have like really fucked studios up. A
yeah,
thousand words, like Meet
oh
Dave,
God.
because like
Yeah.
he got to a point of like career, that thing where it's like my money doesn't even get out of bed for less than like a $5 million payday. Like you get such a bloat to it
Yeah.
that it's like you're not getting an Eddie Murphy or a Jim Carrey movie made without a budget of $80 million, because like 30 of that is going to them.
That's
But then these
a great example, because like yeah, you look at like imagine that and Meet Dave, and it's like Mr. Popper's Penguins and all that shit.
well, and something that I've heard discussed on the Blank Check podcast that I think is, you know, really true, and you can really see it with comedians is you're funny in the beginning, doing your own thing and being unique and original. And also, if you're new and young, you get good material. And then when you become an established name and people know that a Jack Black, you know, on a poster is good for money, that's when they give you Gulliver's Travels. That's when they start giving you shit that's not good.
Year
It
one.
isn't, that's not funny. Year one, it's not good. It isn't funny. It's a bad script, but you're funny. You can make this shit material work, right? You're Jim Carrey. You can't take Yes Man and make this a funny movie.
Yeah,
And
true.
like they stop getting interesting roles or anything. They just get like shit again from development hell, like stuff that's like sitting on the table, no one's really touching. And that's why when you read the IMDb trivia for movies from the 2000s, it's always like Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like actors considered for this were like Sean Penn, Bill Murray, Vince
Oh
Vaughn.
my
It's like
God.
it's like you didn't know what the hell you wanted.
Yeah,
Like
no
no one
kidding.
knows anything making this stuff.
No, and it like the early 2000s, this has actually oddly come up quite frequently in the last couple episodes of the show, but it was such a confused time. Like people really didn't know what direction things should have gone. It really doesn't feel like there's a lot of movies that had a vision or a focus that, you know, it seems like we're finally getting back to a time where people are putting a lot of attention and stock into filmmaking, like actually forming something that's gonna stand the test of time. Have you seen? Because I know Murphy's been making a pseudo comeback over the last couple of years. Like I still haven't seen Dolomite Is My Name. I've heard great things about it though.
I've heard great things as well. Still haven't seen that.
I heard terrible things about Coming to America too.
I can believe that. I was
Yeah.
super, super hyped on, I think it's called You People, the Jonah Hill, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Eddie Murphy
Yeah.
interracial dating comedy. Just kind of just ended up on Netflix and I never watched it. And never, I don't have Netflix anymore, I guess, but
Is that
didn't,
the Jonah Hill kiss movie where they CGI'd the kiss?
they CGI'd the kiss at the end. Yeah.
Wild.
So I haven't seen that, but like that, but, and we're going on just a million different tangents here,
Yeah.
but when movies go straight to Netflix, they're not real movies. Like they don't. It's I need to have a memory of seeing the poster in the auditorium. Like
Yeah, we are
it's a
missing that.
disservice to the work of people to just have like it's like a TV. It's like it doesn't count. It's not a real.
No, yeah, it definitely does feel like everything's just diluted at this point, and it's a real shame because I remember it'd even be exciting when like you would see all the like when you go to a video store and there's the wall of the new releases and it has like all of them. You see the same cover and over and over and over again, and then there would be like a special
Artie Lang
edition.
and Beer League.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, like there's so many interesting posters and artwork. Like obviously not a lot of it good, but going back to Haunted Mansion, like I like the poster for this one.
Yeah, I do too with Eddie Murphy's scared and befuddled face on the front.
Yeah, yeah, it totally just like it's exactly what it is. But I like that one and I like the one that's just like of the Haunted Mansion doors. But yeah, like this I don't know, like did you find this movie overly funny at any moment?
No, I will say
No.
that outright. I think the Eddie Murphy being like, "So you're trying to tell me a ghost is trying to get jiggy with my wife?" That line is funny, but also I just found it funny how often Eddie Murphy in the movie does the. It's in the Mission Impossible movies a lot as well, which I was watching this month. But like, so you're trying to tell me,
Yeah.
wait, let me get this straight. So if I'm following right, it's like they're just spoon feeding you the plot,
Yeah.
exposition, every bit of the way. But like Eddie Murphy, he's doing it just multiple times per scene. And
Hmm.
it's like, did you have like a script supervisor? It's just every single line of dialogue is just him being like, hold up, let me get this
Yeah.
straight.
And you know what's kind of sad is they revert to that again in the new one. Like there's a couple moments like that in this 2023 version as well, and that really stood out to me. But that's a prime example of like what I was talking about, where some of the jokes in it are so not funny that they are funny to me. Because I'm like, what? Who? How do you come up with this?
Well, like, yeah, and him when Eddie Murphy's getting upset at the singing heads, like, yeah, it's hokey. I'm reminded of the little ashes from Army of Darkness. Like, it's annoying and like carnivalesque, like
Yeah,
frustrating, cheesy, annoying, scary. These are all kind of working in concert together.
yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, I don't know. Like, did you ride the Haunted Mansion ride at Universal or sorry, Walt Disney? Have you ever been?
I've been to Florida in 2002, and then in 2009 we went to California. I can't really remember the Haunted Mansion specifically. There's, I don't know, like on my Disney trips, you're eager to see the teacups and the kind of the ones
Hmm.
that seem super iconic, but I don't really remember specifically a lot of the rides that I did go on. The Aladdin Magic Carpet, I remember was a fun one. I remember I chickened out of this is a ridiculous story, but I chickened out so many times of going on the Aerosmith rock and roller coaster
Oh yeah.
because we took time off of school. We went in November for my brother and my birthdays. So we were there when like school was in session, when the parks were like totally dead empty. So
Hmm.
we could like ride, there was no lines, anything. And I chickened out like three times in a row to ride the Aerosmith roller coaster. And then my dad finally agreed to ride it with me. And I waited until he got strapped in and then chickened out and he rode it without me.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's like such a rite of passage to do that. Like the feeling of That's like I love roller coasters now. Like it's one of my things. Like whenever I'm like feeling particularly depressed, I like think about I'm like fuck, if I just had money, I would buy a flight to Florida and just ride the Hulk roller coaster all day on repeat, just because it helps so much, like boost my endorphins and
See, again, though,
serotonin.
that's the difference of terror versus horror. Like that's adrenaline. Like
Yeah,
that's something that like gets your heart, like gets you feeling like you're living. That's not something that I'm getting from the Haunted Mansion
no,
necessarily. It's a different kind of feeling. But
absolutely. I like closing thoughts on that. Like I love that Haunted Mansion ride. It's I like, I said before, I just like the aesthetic. I'm a huge Halloween nerd, so I just love the season and I love the fog and the spooky vibes of everything and all the ghosts. And I think the ghosts look great in this movie. And it just goes to show though, because like this was back when this would have been around the tail end of Rick Baker's career, because I think it was Maleficent that officially made him shut down his shop, because he's like, there's just no point in doing this anymore because everything's just, either done on computers or CGI, and it's his work gets covered up, or he went from having like one of the biggest studios in the world to saying that he's like, I could have done Maleficent in my garage. And that's really disheartening. But this was still an era where even if the ghosts and they have some like CGI cleanup on them, they still look like they were real people dressed up like that. And I love the look of them.
as I'm thinking of it now, I do have memories of the Twilight Zone
I
Tower
love
of
that one.
Terror.
Yeah.
That one I do really like. And that also has a movie. That was like a Disney Channel
Steve
movie.
Gutenberg.
Oh, is it Steve? I guess
Yeah,
that probably is him in that.
it's
Yeah.
Steve Gutenberg, and I'm pretty sure Kristen Dunst. That
Yeah, that
movie that
checks
movie
out.
is it's been popping up everywhere lately. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, everyone, like a lot of places that I follow on social media are like revisiting Tower of Terror from, I think it was like 1998 or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. I liked that as a kid. That was good. And that going on the ride, knowing that movie was definitely an exciting thing.
Yeah, that ride scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, and I love that one as well. But yeah, do you have any closing thoughts on Haunted Mansion 2003?
Only my one final note here is that it was Nelly playing over the credits, and it was the song that has samples the Law and Order theme song, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, that I laughed pretty hard when the credits kicked in.
It's odd, an odd choice. That's all I can really say. Just yeah, I don't know. It was good. Nice to hear the Nelly song, but at the end of the movie, I thought it would maybe be something a little more horror oriented, but
No, no, it's family fun, and this would have been around the time we saw Nelly starring in films like The Longest Yard.
oh, of course, yeah, if you probably Auditorium 2 just down the hall when this was playing.
Oh no, this was 2005. So, or no, Longest Yard is
Oh, this is
2005. But
2003. Oh, yes, we're getting. Yeah.
it was a different time. Nelly on top of the world.
Well, maybe I'll say one more point, but this is to move forward into the discussion of this new one, which also came out in Bricked, and I think is not doing well at the box office on its opening weekend, even though you and I both went and saw it. I don't know.
I can't believe I did that.
Two single tickets sold, and this movie's not making boffo. But
Yeah,
I can really imagine as I was watching this movie and as I was seeing the singing heads, I can really imagine Bob Iger or Jeffrey Katzenberg, like any of these guys who've run Disney over the years. Like you watch DVD special features or you see these like making of featurettes, and it's like, oh, and we had to ask permission from the CEO to do this. And it's like they do this like Disneyfication thing to make the CEOs of Disney seem like good, nice guys. And like
yeah,
I knew, from the moment I saw the concept art for Sully, I knew we had a classic film on our hands. And like they're so quick to take credit for, like when a movie goes right, it's always going to be like, oh, and I always look at, one-eyed Mike Wazowski and I think, Jeffrey Katzenberg like believed in this movie. And like you would be saying that about Haunted Mansion, you'd be saying that about The Shaggy Dog with Tim Allen if it made a buck.
Oh
Like
God.
complete saw that in theaters.
Wild.
Complete just shameless they're looking to make a buck off these products and off this IP. They do it to such mixed success so often, but you can tell that like they're just chomping at the bit to take credit for any success when it comes.
Let's get on to the new one, because I think that this statement is going to touch in on that. But the film's obviously, yeah, like you said, it's not doing well. So let's dig into the Haunted Mansion from Haunted Mansion 2023.
Just Haunted Mansion, it's cleaner.
Wait! I should warn you before you step inside the house. This could change the course of your entire life.
I'm not afraid of a couple ghosts.
You say that now.
This mansion is unhinged.
These ghosts definitely don't want to leave.
Death lurks around every corner. God, give us a break. There's so many bad people in the world. Haunt them.
Amen.
I do like surprises.
Is anybody else seeing this?
I hope you do too.
We're gonna fight, whether we like it or not.
Or else we're stuck here for eternity.
If this comes down to an exorcism, we're in big trouble.
This house is dripping with souls, but there's always room for one more.
Was mugged.
He was tall. He had hair that was sticking out of a top hat.
Top hat.
Yes. He had, yeah.
So
nice.
a top hat.
You would pull a rabbit out of it, probably.
Eyes.
They were a bit sunken.
Deep sunken eyes.
Like a raccoon.
Beady
They
eyes.
set back. And he was smiling like, yeah, like that.
This kind of thing.
Exactly.
Is this the man who mugged you?
Wow. You just did that just now?
Going off of that, like think about the time that we're living in right now, like with the industries just in the shits right now. It's really sad what's all going on with the strikes and everything. But on the other hand, theaters are packed because people are dressing up and going to see Barbie and Oppenheimer in the same day. There's a new Mission Impossible movie out, and for the love of God, I just can't wrap my head around how they thought of releasing Haunted Mansion in July with all these other movies and not in October. And I read into it a little bit, and it sounded like they thought that it would bomb really hard if it came out in October because there's all these other horror movies they could go to. Like people are going to want to go and see actual horror movies. I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense. If there's a time this movie's going to succeed, it's in October.
It's the stupidity of like this is a movie for children, people. Like this is something to take your kids to. You're not going to be like, if you're going, you're not walking to the theater and being like, do I want to see Haunted Mansion or Exorcist Homecoming or whatever that movie is going to be. That doesn't look good.
Oh my God, dude. I can't even.
I don't know if we want to get into that.
No,
I didn't see the trailer for that before Oppenheimer, but I heard people who did see it saying how bad it was. So I had to look it up.
I consider
for that.
I consider The Exorcist to maybe be the greatest horror movie ever made. And I've been, I wasn't a big fan of David Gordon Green's Halloween movies, so my hopes weren't super high about this new Exorcist. But I had heard that there might be a trailer before Oppenheimer, and it was playing when I saw Oppenheimer. And it honestly took like 30 seconds into the trailer for me to even realize. I was like, oh my God, this is The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm. and not in a good way either. Like,
no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not too stoked for that one. I don't know if I'm going to be rushing out. I don't know if I'm going to go to the theater 20 minutes from my house on a Saturday morning at 12 by myself and say one ticket to The Exorcist like I did with with Haunted Mansion.
I went to a suburban mall. I like went out into the sticks to see this movie in like a proper dive mall movie theater for a 750 ticket price. And it was a good experience. It was an authentic, I saw it with a real crowd. Did you have a crowd in your theater?
I did, but well, it wasn't huge. Like there was probably about like 40 people in there, but honestly, it was like 95% of them were adults, which I was kind of surprised by because that's one thing. Like when I pulled up to the theater that morning, I just thought, God damn it, Mitch, why did you agree to this? Like, or why did you? I'm pretty sure
I know.
I think you said Haunted Mansion 2003, and I was like, let's double feature it. I'll go see the new one. And then I was like, walking in there, and I just felt so wrong. I'm like, I'm a 33-year-old man walking in to see Haunted Mansion by myself. But then I felt less bad when I saw how many adults were there.
Yeah, my screening of Haunted Mansion on Saturday gave me the guts to go see Barbie as a single man of nearly 30 by myself this afternoon. So yeah, it was a bit of a crowd in my theater as well. Some kids, some adults didn't seem like it was going over well with the audience, I would say. But like, I don't know, Barbie didn't seem like it was making the audience laugh either. Like it kind of also played to a dead room, and there's a lot more people at Barbie.
Yeah, the Barbie crushed when I saw it. Like the audience was going wild for it. And then, like I said, there wasn't many people in my screening of Haunted Mansion, but I picked up on that people were generally enjoying it. That's kind of how it felt.
I got walkouts on both movies, actually. There was a mother and a young daughter who walked out of Haunted Mansion, and then two young adult girls around like university age walked out of Barbie. Right during the America Ferrera, monologue about what the expectations put on women, two women got up and walked out during that. Interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, that is very interesting. But the world is interesting right now. People are out of their fucking minds all across the world. So there's no real rhyme or reason or understanding to this. But the movie is
only laughing. They were only laughing at the Will Ferrell parts of Barbie mostly. Like that was what was getting the laughs out of the audience.
So
like,
weird.
There's other people in here with me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's so weird. And that not to bring it back to Barbie again, but like Will Ferrell was my least favorite part of that movie. Like I didn't find those scenes overly funny or anything.
I just enjoy. It's been a while since I've seen him. Like his little just like one-off one-liner things. I was just getting a good kick. Like Kate McKinnon is someone I also hadn't seen in a while, and whenever Kate McKinnon came on, I'm like, you can go back where you've been. Like I don't really need. But Will Ferrell, I had an appreciation for.
Yeah. No, that's good. And then, so we got Haunted Mansion 2023, directed by
Owen
Justin
Wilson.
Seaman. We got Owen Wilson from
Cars 2.
That's a great one.
Marley and Me Wonder.
Oh my God, I have not
Drill Bit Taylor, of course.
Yes, it's got to be Drill Bit Taylor. That's the go-to.
Kyle Zervinsky is pounding the table right now listening to this.
Be like Drill Bit Taylor.
Oh, but also, you on the previous episode, The House on Haunted Hill, you were trying to remember the name of Space Channel, number 39.
Yeah, that's what it was. Space Channel.
Space Channel, yeah. I was listening to it, and then Boozy was saying someone out there is like yelling at their iPod. I'm like, oh, that's me.
That's funny. Yeah, and then we got
Lakeith
Stanfield. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have a deep pull for him. Like, honestly, he's the reason I wanted to go to this movie. I really like Lakeith Stanfield.
He's got so much charisma. You see people like him on screen, and it's like, oh, there's still movie stars out there. Like there's still people who really have that, like, can carry an entire movie on their shoulders and have charisma and like star power. They're not just all, people from the past, but like they need to have careers befitting of a star, not just like water it down doing crap and being on social media. Like I find that Tom Cruise, the fact that he makes movies, he is on the red carpet and then he goes away again, and you don't see him until he has a movie. There's an exclusivity to him. That's what stars nowadays lack, is that they're just in front of us all the time.
Yeah, true.
They're hosting podcasts out of their garages or whatever, they're doing what we do. There's not a potency to it.
He does feel like just an authentic actor, like a true master of his craft, or someone that's at least always pushing the envelope a little bit. And you see that in his tremendous the first time I ever saw him was in Short Term 12, and he just absolutely floored me in that movie. And then since then, Judas and the Black Messiah is amazing. Sorry to Bother You is a fucking great movie.
Uncut Gems,
he's so good. Death Note.
I guess he's in Straight Outta Compton, but I haven't seen that since theaters. I don't know who he plays in that, but
that was a great movie. I think he plays Snoop Dogg.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's Snoop Dogg. But yeah, no, he's great. And then Rosario Dawson, I've had a crush on my entire life, and she's great. Everyone knows her from Clerks 2.
From Clerks 2. That's what I think of course, when I think of her. And Rent. Yeah, no, I've had a crush on her for some time as well. Nice when you check in on an old flame and it's, then your heart still flutters.
Yeah.
It was nice to see Rosario, and I enjoyed spending my afternoon with her.
Yeah, no, she's great. And obviously I think she's just about to blow up even more than ever, because she's playing the character in the Star Wars series that I don't know if I'll ever see. But then, of course, you got Danny DeVito from Be Cool.
Now that is a pull from Look Who's Talking Again.
Oh my God. Look, I talk about Look Who's Talking way too much. I grew up with those movies and they're such pieces of shit.
We had a teacher in high school. We had life transitions, and it was the home ec teacher. It was supposed to be teaching you how to like do your taxes and pay your bills, like be a functioning adult. But it was just a teacher, total like feet on the desk, had been teaching 25 years. This course syllabus had not been upgraded. So all she did was show us movies, and she showed us Look Who's Talking to understand what it's like to have a baby. She showed us Not Without My Daughter, the like Iranian husband, kidnapping movie. And then there was another crazy one in there as well, Sleeping with the Enemy.
Wild. That
Julia Roberts. These were like
school?
These were in grade 12. These were like assigned and like clearly just movies that she liked, that she had taped off TV.
That's wild. Yeah, we always saw wild shit like that in school. Like, I remember Christian ethics watching Batman Begins and X-Men. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? But okay, we got to move on to one of the most egregious things about this movie that I honestly felt like I forgot that this person was even in the movie, but we got Jared Leto in this thing, apparently.
And yeah. Jared,
my God. Like, let's just start talking about the movie. What did you think about Haunted Mansion?
I thought that it had no ever loving reason to be over the 2-hour mark. I will start with that. I thought the same thing about Barbie, to be fair, but like, there is nothing wrong with a 90-minute movie. I'm not going to walk out of a 90-minute movie and be like, my watch broken? Like, was the projector broken, buddy? Like,
yeah,
I don't know what has happened that you can't just get, Mario, which made a bunch of money this year, I think was like 93 minutes. And
yeah,
that's great. It's not enough to make me want to go see Mario, but it's like more of this. Like, let's have this happen. I thought, I was worried that it was gonna be too much about trauma and about like, like sometimes like the scars or like the ones that can't heal. And there's some of that. It's like a bit of that, but it still allowed itself to be spooky and goofy in a lighthearted way, more so than I thought it maybe could. It has a complete flat. Yeah, like the lighting is not good. It's not very well mounted. I don't think it had quite the same spooky ambience, although it did pick up in the third act. Like, yeah. I think it does kind of like build to an interesting conclusion, and there's some visuals as the opening credits were going through, because like I had really not been keeping much of a radar on this movie. I've seen Owen Wilson flogging it all over the Cineplex pre-show. I was thinking of this as an Owen Wilson movie, and then as the credits were going and as the movie's getting started, it's like, oh, Lakeith Stanfield is like the star of this movie. Like he's actually like the guy, Owen Wilson's
Yeah.
second banana, whatever. But so I'm reading these credits and being like, oh, okay, Jamie Lee Curtis, not bad. Like, and all those. And then it gets to the Jared Leto, and I'm like, ooh,
dude, like I completely forgot or didn't know that he's in this movie. And then when I saw him in the movie, I realized I'm like, there was no absolutely anyone on earth could have played that character. Like there's no Jared Leto in it. His voice is modulated. He doesn't look anything like Jared Leto. It's just a CGI character. I'm sure he did some kind of more motion capture, but I doubt he was even in that motion capture suit much. They probably put other people in it because he was getting some poor PA to wheel him around in a wheelchair like he did on Morbius.
No, I would completely agree about that. But I also kind of feel that Jamie Lee Curtis, nothing wrong with her performance, but it's weird to follow up an Academy Award winning performance. And maybe I guess you don't plan for these things, or you can't schedule for it.
Yeah.
But it's like it's crazy that this is like she's Oscar winner Jamie Lee Curtis now, and you have her in your movie doing this. Like this sucks. Like she didn't deserve something better. Or just like cast anyone else in that part or something. That again was one of those things that I can just imagine being like Bob Iger, if this movie made $1 trillion, being like, and I've said, and of course we've got to get Jamie Lee, and she was coming off the Oscar win. Like I can just see people taking credit for this, but like it's like, what were you thinking?
Yeah. No,
that's the reaction I get.
Totally. Bottom line for me, I just this movie is just very nothing to me. Like I unfortunately like the 2003 version more. And I think it's because that I at least got to enjoy the ghosts. And of course the ghosts look all right in this too, but they didn't feel tangible. They didn't feel real because it was primarily CGI, which I'm not always against. But so much of this movie just felt so artificial. And what grounded it, what kept pulling me back to being like, okay, it's actually not that bad though, is Lakeith Stanfield. He's just a force. He's great. And I genuinely felt like his pain throughout the movie. So that's something that I'll give it. I think that, there is some beauty to what this movie's trying to say and what it's representing and what it's trying to teach kids. But I feel like it was pretty heavy for a kid's movie, which I'm not against, but like there was some good stuff near the end there with the character with Lakeith Stanfield and the kid who plays Travis. Like some of that felt like there was some genuine heart in it. You always felt like there was heart on the screen when Lakeith Stanfield was on the screen. But then there was just so many nothing moments that made me, by the time the credits were rolling, because I was checking my watch quite hard in the last 40 minutes. So I
got up and I took a not I did not rush to the concession stand to get my drink. I'll say that much.
Yeah, I did that as well. Walked outside for a little bit because it was just there's just, like you said, there's just no reason why this movie should have been as long as it was, and it just didn't feel justified at all. That doesn't
when they're gearing up in the third act where it's like, oh, it's this place and it's a 3-hour drive away. I'm like, a 3-hour drive? Fuck. Yeah. Like, you do that movie math if it's like, so we're gonna see them on the way there, or we're gonna do a 3-hour time jump. Like, what are we doing here? Like, that had me stressing. I'm like, my drink's done. What am I doing?
Yeah, no, totally. And like the positives I would say about it is like there are obviously lots of like homages to the ride that felt, real. Like the whole Danny DeVito getting picked up by the chair and being rushed out of the building. Because like that's like kind of what you sit in when you're on that ride. And like I said, I do love that ride, and you can see a lot of the ghosts. And the 2003 one did that really well as well. But there were moments that felt like it was kind of simulating the ride a bit, which I think that's the direction you go when you're making a movie about a ride. So that's what kind of worked.
I think this movie had too much. I think the '03 is a good example of making a movie out of a ride. And like for the warts and all of like how good the movie actually is, it feels like a ride
Yeah.
turned into a movie, or like a movie based on a theme park ride. It's like this seems like theme park cinema to me.
Yeah,
Whereas
it had more energy.
yeah, and then this one, it's got I don't know if I want to call it like the Ted Lasso effect or something, but like yeah, like everything is now it's about trauma and it's about like reconnecting with your parents and it's about forgiveness and like all this. It's just like can a skeleton like fall out of a closet, folks? Can like is there a
Yeah.
jack-o'-lantern or a black cat around here? Like this is a horror, right? Like what I could have used a little more of that, but
Yeah, and like
it,
that's the thing too. Is I actually generally like gateway horror, like teen kid friendly horror movies. Like one that comes to mind is The House with the Clock in Its Walls, like from a couple of years ago. That was directed by Eli Roth, and it was actually decent. Like the Halloween atmosphere was there, the performances were fun and entertaining, and like it didn't feel like I wasn't checking my watch in that one. But
is that with Jack Black or am I just
yeah,
thinking of Goosebumps? He's
J-
in that as well.
yeah, Jack Black and Kate Blanchett.
Oh, Carl. That could
Yeah,
be good.
no,
Eli Roth. I didn't know that that was him.
yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's probably my favorite Eli Roth movie. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't get that from this one. It's just felt very hollow. I'm never gonna watch it again. I was kind of bummed out. Like I didn't have huge expectations for this movie, but I definitely like within the first half hour of the runtime, I was like, God damn it, what have we done?
Well,
I was gonna message you while I was watching it, say, what have we done?
I'm I'm glad that like I'm so glad we didn't come in and that you were like I couldn't believe how good it was and I'd have to feign
Yeah,
interest. I'm
no.
glad that it made an equal. It's just sort of lack of an impact on you. Yeah, I don't know. It's Owen Wilson's kind of funny. Danny
Hmm.
DeVito very funny doing just Frank Reynolds. Like he's that now, right? Like that's become
Yeah.
his legacy and like his comedic his
Which
thing that
yeah,
he does now.
he's great at it. But like
Oh,
yes,
he's so
Frank.
funny. Danny DeVito from Anything Else, where he also falls to the ground and has a heart attack in that movie, and I actually thought of that when it
Yep.
happened in the Haunted Mansion
Danny DeVito from Matilda, which he also directed.
from Matilda. He's kind of an underrated director.
He really is. He knows movies and the craft. That's what happens when you've been in the business for that long and when you're a character like him where he's so unique. Like you can't just cast Danny DeVito in anything. I mean you can and he'll turn it into something. Always.
He makes it DeVito.
Yeah. But no, I don't know. I can't really recommend rushing out for this one. I think it's one that if you're interested in it, hopefully it'll probably the silver lining of it coming out in July is it's probably going to be on Disney Plus by Halloween.
Maybe
Um,
that's what they were banking for. They knew it was going to lose a big chunk of money. They're like, well, at least we'll get our second bite at the
yeah,
apple by
no, for sure.
Halloween.
Yeah, which would make sense, and I'm sure I probably would have liked this even a bit more if I was like watching it from home and could do other things. But that's not a ringing endorsement on a movie. If you're like, it'd be good to put on in the background. It's like no, because I don't know. Even like the sets, like that's really what made me want to see it. Was I just love the aesthetic and I love sets and all the makeup and all that. Like I've said, but in this one, even the sets, so much of it just felt green screened and like you could kind of see the edges and it just kind of made me want to watch the original again or the 2003 one.
Well, and on that note, I kind of had a feeling watching it that I kind of like sometimes when you see and it's a little bit different now, but like John Carter, which came out in I think 2012, or like Tomorrowland with George Clooney.
Yeah.
There was a time there when I was pretty interested in these like big budget $200 million Disney live action movies that weren't superhero Marvel franchise or Star Wars, like IP anything. Just these like okay, like what is Disney, the most powerful company in the world? Like what do they do when they have like a $300 million budget for a movie? And these like John Carters and like all these things that have come out and not done well and been big boondoggles because Disney live action has notoriously been their like weak spot for all of eternity. I think basically up until the Marvel era,
Yeah.
like Pirates of the Caribbean kind of got them on the right track, and then they became the franchise thing. But as I was watching this, I was thinking that it's nice to see compared to Indiana Jones, which like cost $400 million, and the entire time I was watching it, I had a sense of dread in my stomach of like, good God, this costs so much
I
fucking
know.
money. And it
Yeah.
was like upsetting, and like all, like I felt like I was watching like the fall of Versailles. It's like this is such a like they spent so much fucking money on this movie that nobody is seeing. And
Yeah.
I was watching Haunted Mansion being like, it's nice to see a movie that didn't need to have that kind of a budget. And then I looked and saw that it cost $150 million.
It's absolutely insane. But no, we can't give the writers enough fucking money to eat of 3 meals a day.
Yeah, it's I did feel bad as the strike is going on, like stepping out. It's like, okay, because this movie begins with the Walt Disney 100th anniversary, logo of the
Yeah.
cat castle and everything. Sitting down to see that, and then sitting down today to see Barbie during the writers' strike, and being like, yeah, I'm here. I am shelling out for the two biggest
I
studios. Like,
know. Yeah, I had the same thought. I'm like, and I've been watching more movies than ever in well, not than ever, but like than the last year or so. Like I've been to the theater so much recently, and it's like now's not the time to be going, but it's like I just can't help it. I don't want to miss Oppenheimer in the theater.
oh my God, I loved Oppenheimer.
Yeah, me too. That one really made me feel something. Where it's like Haunted Mansion, I just didn't feel anything, and I don't want to turn this off because I know that you enjoyed it. I didn't hate Indiana Jones the way that a lot of people do, but that's another one. I didn't feel anything watching it. Like it just didn't do anything for me really. Like I could tell like it's competently put together and Mangold's a good director, but it's weird going to an Indiana Jones movie and not even like I'm not even feeling angry. Like it would have been better if I would have reacted to it and that way it got some kind of reaction out of me.
I only had the most moderate of enthusiasm for it because I went and saw it after opening weekend when I like felt like I was skipping it. Like I felt like I
Yeah.
consciously didn't have interest and wasn't going to go see it. And then it bombed so badly that I was like, oh fuck, maybe I should go see it. Like, and then
Yeah.
I did, and I like kind of enjoyed it, but like I I'm done with Star Wars as well. Like these things
Oh,
from the past. Like you can't just like bring these things back incessantly and have me. It's like I thought that it was better than Indiana Jones 4, which I had been hyped to see in theaters. Like I thought it was more enjoyable than that. I thought Mads Mikkelsen was good. I thought that the ending was so preposterous. Like I thought
yeah.
it took it like went three more stops past Stupid Town than uh Crystal Skull ever did. But like
Yeah.
I honestly at the end of the movie I'm like no one has seen this movie. I'm like this twist is so stupid and no one's even going to talk about it because no one's seeing this movie.
Yeah.
Like this movie's backlash proof because it didn't even make an impact for people to talk about how stupid this is.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, man. Well, do you have anything else you want to say about Haunted Mansion before we close up?
No, I hope that we get more of these theme park based movies. I think this is proving to be a really viable genre and subgenre. And if they have any more of these coming out, I'd be happy to come back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got to get you back on the show just regardless. And yeah, invitation's always there if you can think of something that you want to talk about. I love chatting movies with you, man. It's been great getting to know you and I love your show. I'm actually when we close up tonight, I'm gonna I'm gonna revisit Insomnia because I haven't seen it in like 15 years. And then I'm gonna listen to that episode. I've been saving that one because I've been wanting to rewatch Insomnia. I can barely remember anything about it.
Oh, it's there's more to it than you remember if it's anything like my viewing went. So I hope you enjoy that.
I told one of my friends that like one of my other movie buddies, he's like, "What are you watching tonight?" I said Insomnia. He's like, "Oh my God, that's such a good idea." He's like, "I haven't thought of that movie in forever." And he's been texting me the last like hour being like, "This movie's so much better than I remember."
Well, I'll jump in with that. If there, yeah, movies that you kind of don't remember existed, that's a niche that I try to fill on my show from time to time. So movies that you have heard of
Yeah.
them, you've maybe even seen them, but you haven't been thinking about them. So that's what we do over on Formatted to Fit Your Screen.
Yeah, I definitely implore people to check that out. And if you're a podcaster yourself and you're listening, Zach would be a great guest on your show.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to hear more from you. It's always a blast. And yeah, what do you got going on? Let's do some plugs here. Like tell the listeners a little bit more about Formatted to Fit and where you can listen to it, where you can follow you.
Yeah, geez, the show is available, I think, through most all podcasts, sources. You can get on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that. I am the sole host of the show, and I'm there every second Friday with a revolving sort of second guest there. I call it the show where two people who have seen a movie have a conversation, and it's agenda free, sort of free form conversation based on the subject of a movie. It's kind of like a book club where the movie prompts the discussion, but the discussion goes wherever it does. And I have on personal friends as well as artists and filmmakers, film critics from across Canada and North America. So we've got 55 plus episodes and counting. So that's what we do over there on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely recommend checking that out. And yeah, that's one I've been saving too. I got to check it out because he had Travis Hebert on for the Master of Disguise.
That's a fun episode. That was that was a good time watching that movie as well. That was in the deep freeze of winter, and I watched that from my bathtub because my apartment was so cold.
Oh God, that's exactly how you should see Master of Disguise.
Yeah, and it's so uncomfortable that it's impossible to laugh and then to watch the most laugh-free movie of all time.
Oh man, I saw that in the movie theater.
Saw that in the theater as well, of course.
Brutal. I have a friend, he like lives here in Vancouver now, but he grew up in LA, and he's like, I've been to 2 film premieres in my life. And I was like, which ones? He said Master of Disguise and Son of the Mask. I'm like, how did you manage to only go to like 2 of the worst movies ever made?
Yeah, that's a crazy batting average of like movies that are like unreal shitty.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I was like, I went to the Getty image site because I was trying to find pictures of him, like, it's somewhere in the background because he would have been like 10 years old at the time. But yeah, wild stuff. Well, anyways, yeah, like I said, this has been a total blast. I hope people enjoyed listening to it. I hope you go and follow Zach and his show. And next week we'll be back. It's just an episode with just Boozy and I. We talk a lot about horror movies we've seen recently, and then we talk about Sharksploitation, the new documentary on Shudder, all about shark films. So that's what we got going on. But yeah, once again, Zach, thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you being here.
Thrilled to be here, Mitch. Thanks. Later days.
Ciao.